Sawadee Krap, this is David Found here to teach you a couple of ways of using After Effects, Adobe After Effects, and also during this course we will be teaching Premiere Pro. But before I start, I'd just like to talk about computer specifications in order to understand the difficulties you may face by using After Effects, particularly, which is serious demand. It places a serious demand on your computer. If you have a laptop or any type of computer that you're using, it's a PC, a Mac, or a normal laptop, then it would be wise for you to upgrade your RAM if your RAM is not more than 16 gigabytes already. You really should be working on 32 gigabytes of RAM when you use After Effects. Particularly, After Effects is very dependent on RAM, whereas Premiere Pro is the more later versions of being balanced, so they have a what's called leveraged demand on the GPU, the graphics processing unit, the CPU, the central processing unit, and also the RAM, of course. But RAM is not massively crucial with Premiere Pro, even though it's always good to have as much RAM as you can in your computer. But RAM is expensive, or it's cheaper than it used to be, but it's still relatively expensive for you to upgrade if you have the need to do so. So anyway, with today's lesson we're going to be talking about After Effects, and basically 3 or 4 different ways of using After Effects to help you with your video productions. And we're going to start off by talking about something that's relatively new for After Effects, and that is the Sensei algorithms, which utilizes the ability to utilize Adobe Photoshop's content-aware fill. This is a very, very powerful tool to have in your editing software. If you've used Photoshop before and you've used content-aware fill when you want to remove something from your picture, from your image, then you'll know how powerful it can be. And that's been implemented and added to Adobe After Effects to give you the power of Photoshop, essentially, but using this, of course, with moving images. But even so, each moving image is just a stills image, but just multiple images of the same thing, right? Just moving along. Basically, stills images just all joined together. That's exactly what a movie is. Each image that you take, every time you shoot a video, it's a compilation of frames, and frame is basically a stills image. And if you're shooting 25 frames per second, every second you have 25 stills images, essentially for your video. So let's just dig into After Effects for now. Let's just pull up After Effects, the timeline first of all. We'll just show you the interface. I'm currently using After Effects 2021. I think it's basically late version of 2020. And this incorporates content-aware fill and a number of upgrades to the likes of rotoscoping. Rotoscoping we might talk about, but rotoscoping, again, it requires substantial power to achieve the objective of your project. So let's just have a look at After Effects. This is the basic layout that you will be faced with once you open After Effects. You have these, unless you've got your platform set up differently, but this is basically the home window, the home page that you're going to meet with, the default layout for most applications. Now obviously all these things can be adjusted, all these panels can be adjusted, all these bins and panels can be adjusted as you feel necessary to suit your type of editing. And so let's just have a look at how we're going to start with After Effects today. Two choices: new composition from footage, new composition. Let's go with the new composition for now, and we can set up. So let's just call this content when I can spell aware. Okay, and we're just going to do this for basics. Now, whilst you're in this panel, we can set up the resolution so that we're not causing so much demand or creating a lot of demand on your computer's resources. So the first thing you need to do is look at if your computer's not very powerful, then I would drop this down to say a third or a half or a quarter, and that reduces the overall demand on your computer's resource. If your computer's powerful, then just go for full resolution. Even though sometimes people worry about, well, if I choose resolution here, is it going to affect the final output? No, it won't. When you do your final output, you will choose full resolution as you need to, but this is just to give you the chance of using the software without it creating and causing substantial delays and lag on your computer. So let's just drop this down to half, because my computer's fairly powerful. It's got 32 gigabytes of RAM, and that's what I would recommend. At least you have 32 gigabytes of RAM in order to work with After Effects. And in fact, anytime you can increase RAM on your computer will be a lot happier piece of machinery to work with. So here we are, we've got the basic setup. We're shooting this, the footage is actually from my GoPro. It's set at 4K, so that gives you sort of Ultra HD, and so we've got which is 3840 2160. The aspect ratio is locked at 16:9, so we're just going to OK that, and now we have our basic layout, so we can start compositing. Now, the difference between sort of Premiere Pro and After Effects essentially is After Effects is all about compositing, layering, and as the name implies, it's all about helping you create the effects that you want, special effects, SFX on your video, and also to fix a lot of things, and also things like green screen, chroma key, matte tracking, lots of compositing. So compositing essentially is the process of layering and formatting the way that you work on the software. So right now we have nothing in the project bin. We'll call this the project panel. I call them bins and panels, but they're not bins like a tankaya, they're not like a trash can. But what I'll do, I'll just double click on here, and I've already got the folder open for what I want to work on, which is called test footage for AE, After Effects. And this is something from Nakhon Nayok. It's actually a Uttiyaan Chichua Wang Dakrai, so it's called Wang Dakrai Recreation Park. It's a very beautiful place, actually. I've been in Thailand for a long time, but I've never actually been to Wang Dakrai. I've been past it many times, but I've never been in there, and it's actually very, very nice. And I'm not sure whether it's open right now for visitors, but I certainly give them a call, and if ever you go to Nakhon Nayok, you should drop in there. It's really quite cool. So I just did some basic footage so that I can use this footage for teaching purposes, and this particular shot, which says bridge clip for AE tutorial, this is a shot on my GoPro of a bridge that crosses a stream at Wang Dakrai, and essentially it's got two elements that I wanted to fix. There's two things in there that I don't like, and I want to fix them. This is about fixing things first of all, then we'll talk about adding effects to the video as well, but we'll start off by fixing a couple of things. So basically I've got a number of choices. I can drag this straight down to the actual timeline, or I can right click on that and I can choose to select new comp from selection, or I can just drag it straight to the new composition selection. That will now bring up this video clip. Now I've already trimmed the clip to about 40-45 seconds, so we don't have a lot to work with, and this clip is interesting because it's got two things that we're going to remove. It's got to be a bit of work to do this, but it's going to show the power of if you're not using the latest version of After Effects, I recommend that you upgrade to the latest version if you can, and then you've got the ability to work with this type of software in a way that can provide you with content-aware fill and lots of other powerful functions and things that you can find on this software. So here we are with the basic layout. As you can see, one thing that annoys me really a great deal, in fact, is this what looks like a plastic bag. It may be a mask, not sure. I think it's a plastic bag or a piece of paper just thrown there. I'm not blaming anybody in particular. That may have drifted out of a trash can. Who knows? But anyway, it's not nice to have trash floating around anywhere really. It should be in the place it should be, and that is in a trash can. These two things that we need to fix today is going to be this bag, this plastic, this piece of paper, whatever it is here, and also later on in the video, which is pretty good because it's going to give us two things to work on today. It's going to give us basically an object which is fixed. The object's not moving, it's the camera that's moving. So my camera is actually tilting. So I'm basically doing a tilt shot. I'm tilting down, and then I'm tilting back up again. And this is pretty cool because I noticed, in fact, when I first looked at the video footage, this clip, I didn't notice towards the end of the clip, if you watch the way this tilts down, and in fact it's quite bizarre because you'll see how distorted the GoPro lens is as you go down like that. You'll see this becomes quite bulbous and sort of expands in front of you, this floor area. So if we go further down towards the end of the video, about 40 seconds into the video, 39 point and some frames there, you'll see somebody there's a girl actually starting to enter the frame in the top left hand corner. So basically we have two things we need to fix. We're going to fix this girl, we're going to get rid of her, but later on in the video we're going to remove her. But first of all, we're going to remove this blue piece of paper, which is all the way through. You can see the paper all the way through the clip, right? All the way to the end of the clip. So that's 42 and 19 frames, okay? That's seconds. So that's the full duration of this clip. So if we look at the beginning of the clip, we just go back to the beginning. So just press the home key on your laptop or whatever computer you're using, and we're going to fix. First of all, we're going to fix this blue piece of paper. Now, if you look in your effects panel and you don't have content aware, just go to view, window, and you'll find content aware fill. And also what we need tracker. We need to be able to do some tracking, okay? So camera tracking, some motion tracking, and we're going to be doing 3D camera tracking a bit later on. So this is the one we're going to be using now, okay? So we first of all need to use the tracker, and what we need to do to sort of enable the tracker, activate the tracker in effect, is to add a mask. So here we are. We need to first of all select the pen tool, and now we have a couple of ways of doing this. We can use the pen tool and make a selection of the item, okay? We can make a selection of the item like this. Now, based on the fact that this this item doesn't move, it's not actually moving, it's actually stationary, it's just the camera that's moving. That means that we're not going to have any change in the background of that item. It's just going to be the item itself, but the camera is going to be tracking, tilting up and down. So I've used the pen tool. Is the pen tool the ideal way to do this? Actually, I don't think it is, but I'm just showing you one of the options you have. For the next clip, we'll use the pen tool because there's expansion, there's movement to the actual object. if this piece of paper was shifting around and perhaps being blown around a bit, then we would use the pen tool, because every time that you make a selection, you're going to need to expand, or you need to make some changes to the nodes here as you change out the size or expand the actual frame or the mask itself, right? In this particular case, we're not going to use the pen tool, okay? So we're just going to remove that, go back to the mask, remove that mask, and we're just going to start by using, because this piece of paper is actually fixed, it's not, as I say, it's not moving around, we can use a much simpler way, and that is by using the elliptical tool, or the ellipse tool, right? I would suggest we use the ellipse because it's obviously an elliptical, more of an oval shape. We could use the rectangle tool as well, but I prefer to use the ellipse because it sort of suits the object that we're going to remove. So let's choose the ellipse tool. Now we're just going to find a point. We can actually zoom in a little bit. Okay, just use the space bar and then your mouse to drag it to the place where you want to work. Now we don't want to select such a wide area, but we need enough area so that the pixels surrounding the object can be calculated as well. Basically, the algorithms will calculate what pixels there are around the object. That's when Sensei, or the technology that we're using, that the new versions of After Effects uses, algorithms will actually detect the adjacent pixels to the item, and then they'll calculate how they're going to fix the problem by using content aware. But we're going to help After Effects substantially to achieve a pretty much perfect outcome. I hope. Okay, so let's just drag the elliptical ellipse down over that first of all. Now, as you can see, that has sort of covered that. Now we can move that a little bit around. So we're just gonna move this a little bit, right? So we're going to move that around a little bit and just sort of reposition that a little bit. And so we've now got that sort of covered. Okay. Now, as you can see, everything else is being blacked out. What that means is that what we need to do is we need to go to our mask. Sorry, let's just remove this mask, which has come on from somewhere. We didn't want that. But if we just drop down the mask and set the mask path, and then what we need to do is we need to turn this to none. So now we can see the overall image. Okay, we've got sort of a semi-oval shape there. Well, it's pretty much oval shape, and then now we can work on that. And the idea of using this is that we have sort of a fixed outline for when we're creating. I'll show you a bit later on how we're creating reference frames so that we can help After Effects to do its job. Okay, so now what we need to do, we obviously need to track this, because obviously this is the camera is moving, and if I don't track the mask, then the mask is going to obviously fall off the object immediately. So we need to be able to track that mask. Okay, so I'm going to just add some keyframes to the mask. I'm going to change the color of the mask so it stands out a bit better. In fact, we'll just change that to some sort of a deeper color so we can see that much more clearly. And then we're just going to add a little bit of feathering. I would say, probably about 5 pixels or something. It's just putting 5 pixels there, which adds a little bit of feathering, meaning it's just going to soften the overall shape a little bit, so it's not as harsh or as hard an outline for the video. Okay, so here we go. Mask expansion is not necessary because as I said, the object itself does not expand or move around the frame. If you weren't sure that the object was going to be moving, then you should have some mask expansion, so the mask will expand exponentially to then cover the item that you're trying to remove, that you're intending to remove, right? So what we need to do now is just We can go back to fit on the image just to get an overall view, and then we're going to bring the tracker down. Now I don't really need to choose anything. If you go to the tracker, you've got a number of options. If you've got substantial movement with your object, then you're going to need to choose perhaps position, scale, rotation and skew if the object is, you know, screwing round or skewing round or moving in any other way, but it isn't, so we're just going to keep this on position. And the least you choose here, the more quickly this is going to process. It's going to use less processing power on your computer as well. So let's just have a look at how this turns out. We're going to go from the beginning to the end of the video. I'm just going to check this, and we're going to click on here to start the tracking. Okay, now as you can see, the actual track mask, the mask is tracking. It jittered a little bit there. It's jittering a little bit, so it may not be as clean as we need it to be, but I think it's going to do a fairly decent job for this. Now we can stop that. We can track back a little bit. We can stop it during its processing, during the actual tracking. We can go back, and if you drag it through the timeline indicator, you'll see that it's pretty much in line with the item, with the object all the way through there, right? You can drag that through. Once you get to that point, you can then continue. Again, you can move, double click on the mask. You can move the mask a little bit if you wish, or expand the mask a little bit. This is the way to add track points, basically keyframes. These are your keyframes down here, right? So let's continue with that. You see how this turns out. Obviously, because this is a lesson, this is me teaching you how to do this. We're not going to spend hours and hours cleaning this up to make this work. That's going to be your job later on. But now you can see how this is tracking. The tilt was first of all down. Now the tilt is back up again. It's tracking that fairly well. How well it's going to do with content aware at this point, not 1000% sure. But we're doing our best to track that. Now you can see it's jittering around a little bit. It's jumping around a bit. If we just go back and see where it was actually perhaps jittering a little bit, it's just the fact that the software is incredibly heavy demand on the computer. Even though we set at half resolution, I've got 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's doing a pretty good job. But if you've got less than 32, if you only got 16 gigabytes, then you will be struggling with this. Okay, so as you can see here, what's happened, it's jumped off because I haven't actually tracked anything there. We need to go to the end of the, just before the end of the keyframes, which these are the keyframes, and we're just going to continue tracking that to the end. Okay, so that gives us a full timeline track of that object. Okay, now if you don't feel it's necessary to track the object all the way through, then just do what you need to, right? So here, if we just go back a bit, we can track back as well. If we want to track backwards, we can, to give more precision, but that will take a lot longer. We don't want to do that right now. So let's work on this piece of blue paper first of all. This is a piece of trash in the video we want to remove. So just go back to the beginning. Now, how do we help After Effects to do a good job? Well, first of all, we need to give it more data to work with, more pixels to work with. So now we've come down into content aware fill. We can here just add a little bit of expansion, just a little bit, just to cover the perimeter of the item itself, so that we always have pixels which are related to the background and the surrounding areas. Now we're going to be choosing object because we want to remove an object. Lighting conditions or lighting corrections, based on what we're seeing here, it doesn't really need anything here. So the least we choose, the more quickly this is going to be processed. So entire duration, yes, we want that because we want the whole clip, 42 seconds of the clip. Now this is where we can help Adobe After Effects. We can now start creating reference frames. Okay, create a reference frame. Basically what this does it enables Adobe After Effects to take a snapshot, basically a stills image of this frame that we see now. So if I click on create reference frame, I'm going to need to save that out, and we're just going to overwrite that, and this will open up Photoshop. Now, as we open up in Photoshop, the objective of opening up in Photoshop is, to help After Effects do its job more efficiently. And what that means is that we're going to be helping it create content-aware fills. Okay, now that's pulled up the image in Photoshop. I'm just going to enlarge that. Okay, we're just going to use a space bar, drag that up, enlarge that. Now, again, we've got similar choices to what we had before. The previous choice we made in terms of using the ellipse mask was for the tracking purposes. Now we have to make a selection so we can now remove the object. Now, we can do this by, again, using the polygonal lasso tool, or we can use the ellipse. Right? Elliptical marquee. Now, the elliptical marquee is perhaps the best option you have for this type of object, the nature of this object. So we're going to be sort of, if we just go slightly to the left of the object, just left click and drag that over the item itself, what you'll see is we've now got obviously marching ants crawling all over that. Okay. Now, they are positioned so that we can now, if we press Shift and Backspace, it's going to bring up the fill window. Now, obviously, we're going to be choosing content aware. There's other choices you can make yourself, but today this is all about content aware. Press OK, and that should remove that item. Now, what I didn't do and what I should have done before I did that was to add a little bit of feathering. I would say 4 pixels. Let's add 4 pixels feathering to this, meaning that it's just going to soften the border, soften the edges, right, a little bit. Okay, so we're just going to press space and backspace. Sorry, oops, just need to go back there. Sorry, just want to do that one more time, and then we need to move that up so that we're covering the item. And space and shift and backspace, and then remove the item. Now with 4 pixels of softening, basically feathering. Okay, Control D to remove the marching ants or the outline there. Okay, now if we're happy with that, we're going to save that. And what's going to happen? We can remove that now. If we go back to After Effects, what's happened is you'll see it's created a reference frame. This is the way that we help After Effects achieve the objective of removing this item. Now, we're going to move a little bit further down the timeline. I don't think we need to make so many reference frames for this because it is a static object, even though it's the camera is moving. So I think if we do every sort of 10 seconds, I think that will be perfectly fine. So we're starting at 203. We're going to go down to 33 on there, and we're going to generate another reference frame. Now we've left Adobe Photoshop open because we want to be able to work on it, obviously. We're just going to make another ellipse around there. Okay, now we can move this, of course, but what this is achieving is pretty much the same outline as you had with the previous reference frame, so that you're not having, if you use the polygonal lasso tool, you will then have to then make a selection which may not be sort of consistent to the ones you made before. So Shift and Backspace, and then remove that item there. We've got 4 pixels feathered. We Control and D, and then Control Save, and then if we go back to After Effects, we'll see another frame has been made. Now, just to jump forward, so we're not going through this, you get the idea anyway, so that you know now how to make reference frames. And what you're seeing on the timeline, you'll see the reference frames where they've been created. You'll see them being generated here, and you can see them appearing on the timeline. So just for sake of speed, we're going to move forward quite a long way. We're going to go to, say, there. We're just going to make another reference frame, and we'll probably make about 4 reference frames just to help After Effects achieve the objective as we do that. So again, ellipse, drag it over the item, move it where you need to, which is pretty much where it was before, and we're going to use Shift, Backspace, hit Enter, remove it, Control D, remove the matching ants, and then save that out, and that should give us a fairly decent range of reference frames. Now we can move on a bit further if you want, as we get to the point where it comes back down again. Perhaps just one more, maybe 4 or 5 reference frames, one more reference frame. This is just to really help After Effects do its job, right? So one more reference frame here. So basically what I'm doing, I'm just using that as these lines that we have on the frame itself, which you can see the lines showing there, and we're just going to use that as a guide, those guidelines essentially. Shift, Backspace, Enter, Control D, Control S, and save that out, and we might just do one more before the end of the clip, so about there. Okay, so we're going to continue working in After Effects. We've been working on this section here, which you can see there's the mask. Let me just move this over there. So the mask that we originally created to remove this piece of paper is highlighted. You can see it there. It's an ellipse that we've used instead of using the pen tool. So basically we chose the ellipse, or the round, the ellipse tool essentially, from the selection of masks, from the rectangle, rounded rectangle tool, ellipse, polygon, and the star tool, which we've obviously avoided. So we've used the ellipse tool to create the mask here, and you can see, we'll just go back to selection tool. You can see here that the mask is covering the item we want to remove. Now we've already made 5 or 6 fill frames, or reference frames, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so okay, 5. We've got 5 frames there, which are basically reference frames to allow After Effects to be able to do its job more easily than basically relying on it to do it automatically. So as we scroll through there, you can see that we've got the actual item selected. Now if we go back to the mask and just select the mask, now you can see clearly I've made the mask color a deep red, so we can see clearly what the mask is doing. Now obviously before we started the generate fill layer, we had to make the selection here to make sure that it was on subtract. Okay, otherwise it wasn't going to do anything, because if it wasn't on subtract, then Adobe After Effects would have nothing to fill in. It would be just basically an empty space for it. So it has to be told to subtract the object from the frame, from this video clip, and by utilizing content aware fill. So basically it's using its algorithms to select pixels within the close vicinity of the item we want to remove, and it's calculating how many pixels it needs to use to basically overlay onto the item we want to remove. Now, is it perfect? Well, no, it's not perfect, but if we want to make this a lot better, we'd have to spend a lot more time doing that. And for today's lesson, today's sort of tutorial, in order for us to speed things up a bit, I don't want to take for hours, making specific selections. But anyway, you can see that the before and after, if I remove non-select the mask, as you can see, that's the item that we wanted to remove. And if we then put this on to subtract, you'll see that the item has been removed. 1000% perfect? No, it's not, because we need to spend more time on creating the mask. Make sure the mask is probably, there's a lot more reference frames as well. Even though the item is stationary, the camera is doing the tilting, the camera is doing the moving, but the item is stationary. It's not like the camera is stationary and the item is moving around on the screen. The item is actually stationary. So it's done a pretty good job. When I spend a bit more time creating the reference frames, it does a pretty good job actually. And I think to the untrained eye, nobody would know that there wasn't a piece of blue paper there unless we go and select none, then you can see it. But I'm going to select subtract, and we've used content aware to remove that item. Now that's pretty much satisfactory as far as I'm concerned for this tutorial today, in terms of covering that particular item. Okay, so that's one item removed by utilizing content aware fill in After Effects. We're going to continue in part 2, so stay with me in part 2 as I remove a moving object, which is actually, if we just scroll down the timeline a little bit, you'll see in the top left corner is this girl that walks into the shot through the river, and we're going to remove her. But this time it's actually a moving object. The item which we just removed, which was the blue bag here, that was a static object. The camera was tilting up and down, but the object was stationary. The next part of this sequence of tutorials for teaching After Effects is going to be removing a moving object, and the camera is also moving too, so that adds a lot more complication to the shot. So I'm going to attempt to remove this person here as she crosses the river and walks into the shot. We want to remove her and try and do that as cleanly as possible, with the limitations, of course. We always add that little caveat to our videos. But join me for part 2 of Content Aware Fill in After Effects with David Found. Thank you, bye.